and we'll start from there. So, all right, everybody. So, welcome. I know it's going to take a few minutes for people to join us this morning, but first, I just want to say thank you, Christine Hause, from Charlotte State Bank. She's the vice president of the investment and trust side of the of Charlotte State Bank. So, we're going to learn a lot more about estate planning. We're going to dive into some details about what it is that she does, how COVID has had an impact on people, when it comes to estate planning. What changes are people making? What are people thinking about? How can you guys help? And really answer any questions people might have. So Christine, too, the thing is we might have folks that might post comments. So if you have questions, please feel free to share those in our comment section. And when they post them, Christine, what will be cool is it'll pop up on the bottom left hand corner of the screen, so we can potentially answer those if they're relevant and stuff. So,
Great.
Christine, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. And I don't know if there's a particular area you'd like to start out. I think, obviously prior to us having this time together, we were going to be doing a big conference and educating folks in this large conference setting with people all around. But times have changed.
Yeah, social distancing.
I know we're all getting used to the whole webinar thing and the video chat and stuff. So I guess in with everything going on right now, how has COVID had an effect on the estate planning process, or what types of things are you guys seeing happen more and more because of COVID-19 and stuff?
Well, first, Chris, thanks for having me today. COVID has really added a whole new layer of urgency for people to get their estate planning done or review the plans they already have in place. So a lot of the attorneys and I are busy, they're drafting documents, I'm reading documents, we're working with the clients to make sure we, nail down every wish that they have and get those things executed as soon as possible, because having documents in draft form, they're not legit yet, right? So we're trying to make sure that they're correct. Now, if they already have something in place, we're able to look at those documents and make sure that they still meet the wishes. And unfortunately, people are losing loved ones. So a lot of times they've named someone in their documents now no longer with us. And so changes are going to have to be made post-COVID too, to make sure that we update those documents. Because sometimes people don't have a deep team and they only name one or two people, and now one of those folks is gone and we have to make an adjustment.
Gotcha. So would you say right now is there a big change on when it comes to investment strategy right now, or is it more so just on the people just having changes when it comes to they hadn't thought about this in a while and it's now time to start thinking about the estate plan more carefully?
Yeah, it's definitely brought a new emphasis on, did I have a plan? If I didn't have a plan, I need to get one quick, or did I have a plan that maybe doesn't meet my needs? Or is it good? I just need to review it and make sure I know who the key players are, and then go back and sift through that again and make sure that everything is buttoned up. And a lot of it is titling of assets. Have they funded their trust properly? Did they put beneficiaries on accounts that they wanted to go to other people, or did they not have that written down? And now that might be a probate problem. So we're working through that with the bankers as well. And at Charlotte State Bank and Trust, we do a good job of making sure that we fund wills, that we fund trusts. Then, of course, the investment side is a whole other piece. And with the market volatility, there's been a lot of questions there. And a lot of people are, we go into it with a really good philosophy. Greg and Sam are portfolio managers, along with Brittany and Michael, and they do an excellent job. So they go into a scenario like this, and they really have a good game plan before it even hit. So they don't have to panic, and our clients don't have to panic. But other people are seeing a lot of volatility, and some of the stuff that they were in was not good. So they know they're taking a bigger hit than they should have had they been with a trust department. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Sure, absolutely. Now, did you want to go ahead and I can pull up this PowerPoint that that I have, and then you can kind of walk us through a little bit. You guide me. I'm gonna let you be the expert. I'm gonna just sit back here and go along for the ride and learn myself. So
sounds good.
All right, perfect. Here, we'll pull this up here real quick. So you just tell me when to go on to the next slide then, okay?
Okay. Well, some of the benefits of estate planning, of course, we talk about safety nets. What if there is a creditor problem or a bankruptcy, or someone inherits money and they might have some problems financially? What's going to happen there? The screen went black, Chris. Yeah, there it is. Save on probate and settlement costs. That's really expensive. people should realize that and we do a probate risk analysis when we meet with people to say, hey, listen, if God forbid something happened to you two tomorrow, what's your chance of heading to probate? And we talk about that because that's a 6 to 8% expense. And if we can minimize that and, settling it with a trust, and a trust department's 2.25. So 6 to 8% versus 2.25, it's easy to do the math and know where the cost savings can be.
Sure.
We talk about privacy of plans. When you pass away, your will should be filed with the courts. And sadly, one of our future business clients lost her husband to COVID. So we know that she has to get the will out of the vault, in her safe deposit box, and we'll file it with the courts through her attorney. But that's another thing we have to deal with. Keeping control of assets, especially now, if someone's on, it's kind of creepy, but when I do my seminars, I always talk about, you don't want to be on a respirator and have your family find out the power of attorney you created is no good, or the trust that you created has a problem, and here, sadly, now we've got people on respirators. It's very sad.
Right.
Estate tax planning, we always talk about that. How much can you be gifting? What if you died? Would you owe Uncle Sam anything? Selecting the proper administrators of your will or trust, that's hugely important. And I was talking with a couple earlier this week, and they named their children to serve, but their kids live out of state. So what good is having a child in Nebraska to serve in your estate plan when they're nowhere near here, and you might need help? So we talk about that. And of course, planning for loved ones. So that pretty much takes care of the items on that slide.
Awesome. Well, I guess, you tell me when to go on to the next one. So.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah.
And people always ask, what's the basic estate plan look like? What things should I get when I go see the attorney? Everybody will have a last will and testament, no doubt. Even if you have a trust, you're still going to have a last will and testament. And I always use the example of, think of Joan Rivers. She died with a great trust. She amended it all the time. But at the time she passed away, her will was a very important piece of her estate plan because she died at the hands of someone else. Very interesting. That's a probate situation.
Interesting.
It's really fascinating. A living will and a healthcare surrogate, very important now. We've got a lot of people that are sick. They may be having to be taken off life support, which happened to my friend's mom because of COVID.
Do you find people don't have these documents in place, or do you find it that maybe they're just not up to date and maybe they're like they're just not relevant anymore?
4 out of 10 people have an estate plan in order.
Gotcha.
4 out of 10. So 6 out of 10 are walking around with nothing, which is very problematic. And then it has to default to the laws of the state of Florida. Is that really what you wanted? Maybe, maybe not. And then I would say out of the 4 out of 10 who have a plan, I could find something that could be improved just by looking at it for free to make it better. And that's important too. Durable power of attorney, very important. Who's going to pay your bills when you're sick? Who's going to pay your bills when you're incapacitated? If you have Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, some other condition that causes you to have issues. If you don't have a valid power of attorney, you could end up in guardianship court. Very expensive process. We want to avoid that. And then the revocable trust is the last item on that slide, and that's great if you want to avoid probate, you want protection during incapacity. Very important. So that's good.
That's awesome. I appreciate that information. I mean, I think it's important that, if people don't have these documents, to at least, find out what do I actually have, and I know sometimes I would say some of these, could be even confusing, and it might even be worth just having that conversation with you just to understand, am I missing one of these, or do I need all of them, or things like that, I would assume, right?
Exactly. And a lot of times they've never read those documents. I read an estate plan yesterday. It was 130 pages. How many people are going to sit and read 130 pages and understand all that legal language, that's not a normal language that we speak. Thank God lawyers can draft those things, but sometimes understanding them is a bit challenging, especially when people are naming their children. If they don't even read them and understand them, how are their kids ever going to get an opportunity to read them and understand them? So at least when you're dealing with trust officers, we're trained to understand those and administer those documents. So we have to have a good grasp of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, 'cause I think that's the hardest part sometimes too, like the way things are written. Sometimes, like as an outsider, not being in the world of law and understanding why verbiage has to be a certain way, it can be very confusing. It's like, I read that sentence, multiple times. Like, what does that actually say? So
no, it's a whole other language.
Exactly. You want me to go on to the next slide here?
Yeah, the next one would be great.
Okay.
So this is just some definitional terms. Last will and testament. What is that? That's really something that's going to tell the judge and the probate court and your heirs where you wanted your assets to go. And you can change that through life with a codicil. So that just changes the will with a slight change, maybe beneficiary designations, or maybe who's going to serve. Maybe you're switching from a family member to a corporate trustee. So that's where you would make that change. And then, of course, your revocable trust is operative during life, which really gives people benefit during life, where a will only really becomes operative at your death. I mean, there's a peace of mind value to it, but it's not really doing anything for you during life except give you peace of mind. But the trust really does help, and you can change the trust with an amendment. So if you need to make a change of who's going to administer it, who's going to get what, you can do that simply with an amendment through the attorney. Don't try to do it yourself.
Right. What's the inter vivos?
Inter vivos is between the living. So it's a document that's created between you and the attorney and the beneficiary. So it's something that's created during life between the living. So it's not something that's post-death. Like sometimes you'll see a will have a trust that's created, a testamentary, meaning it comes after your death. It creates a trust for somebody else. But this is actually creating it during life while you're living and the beneficiaries potentially are living.
Gotcha. That's awesome. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is great information. Seriously, I mean, so many people could benefit from this for sure.
Yeah, we go over this in our seminars, which I think are going to be probably in a bigger place in the fall. We won't be having them in a conference room anymore. I don't think we want that close quarters,
I know.
We don't want anybody available.
It's gonna be weird, like seating and the whole. I think this whole next year is going to be an interesting time for sure. A lot of changes, But
a lot of new terminology in our vocabulary we didn't have before.
Exactly.
So everybody asks, a lot of times you'll hear this at a conference, what about will versus trust? Should I have a will? Should I have a trust? Very common question. I think as a trust officer, not an attorney, but a trust officer, that wills are great, but trusts help when there's a blended family situation, his kids, her kids, our kids. Things get a little sticky when there's blended families. If there's privacy concerns, wills are public record, trusts are not public record. That makes a big difference too. Family business situations, or maybe couples without children. That's my case. Jeff and I don't have children, so we want to make sure that we had a good estate plan in place with a trust to make sure that we have protection in our later years. And also, if you're over $500,000 of probatable assets, it makes sense to have a trust. You'll save on the exit cost, because we all have an exit cost when we leave this earth. If we're the last one out of a couple to pass, there's going to be some costs involved. So we can reduce that.
When you talk about those costs, are you talking like more in the sense of like taxes or tax burdens and things like that?
It's actually the administrator, so the personal representative of a will or the trustee of a trust, and then the court costs. And then if those folks that you name are not professionals like us, they're going to have to go hire legal counsel. So there's another expense that you have to incur at your estate passing. So we just try to minimize those expenses and bring them down, because really your money should go to your beneficiaries. It shouldn't be going to accountants, investment people, lawyers, and all these other folks that may or may not be necessary depending upon who your administrative team is.
Sure. I do have, we did have one question, Christine, just want to share it with you real quick. It's from someone named Samuel. I'm going to post it on the screen here. It says, what happens if you die and don't have the documents?
That's a great question. Well, that's when the state of Florida is going to handle the estate plan for you, and it may not be what you want. So there is a probate code that when you die intestate without an estate plan, the state of Florida rules are going to apply, which means that you're not going to be able to pick your administrator. You're not going to be able to pick which kids get what money and when they get it. So all those security measures that you would have put in place are gone. If you don't have a power of attorney, you're going to end up in a very expensive guardianship process. It could be $10,000, $15,000 just to start the process. And that's troublesome. Or if you're going to have a healthcare need, it's going to be based on whoever else is picking your healthcare surrogate versus you. So you lose a ton of control.
Sure. So having this plan in place, really does help with, avoiding, like just really costly, expenses where the state all of a sudden takes over, is in control. You can kind of, stay in control and help manage how things are spent or utilized.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, because if you have a son or daughter who's not good with money, do you really want to leave them $250,000 outright? That could cause them death if they have a drinking or a drug problem. Sure. So we are always taking care of the next layer of beneficiary. And you can do what's called a postponement of possession, where you're not letting young people or people who aren't good with money get money until a certain period of time, which is smart. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Samuel, thank you for asking that question. Appreciate you bringing that to our attention. And thank you, Christine, for.
He's also a great portfolio manager, just in case you need to know.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I guess you want me to go on to the next slide here? Or?
Sure, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. Let me go back to this screen real quick. All right.
Okay, so some of the factors you want to consider. Is it a little more expensive to get a trust? Absolutely. It'll probably cost, roughly $1,000, maybe a little bit more versus a will package, but you'll be able to avoid probate. And just do the math. What's, a 4 or 5% of your estate worth? Because whatever that number is, you may save that by having a trust versus having a will. So it may cost a little money now, but the estate will save a lot of money on the back end, which is important. So if you just have a simple house, a car, and a one bank account, you may not need a trust. A will may be fine. So sometimes smaller estates, no problem. You can just go with the will.
Sure.
But always talk to the attorney, get their opinion, of course. That's the leader in this whole plan. And then per capita versus per stirpes. That's really important. If I have a bank account at Charlotte State Bank and Trust, and it's a $100,000 bank account, and I've got 4 children, and I assign each child as a beneficiary, when I pass away, the bank gives the money to whatever of those 4 folks is alive at the time I die. Wow. So if I lose a child with me or ahead of me and I don't change it, that share, that 25%, does not go down to the lineal descendants. It actually goes to the surviving people in that group. And that's generally not the way I see an estate plan drafted. When I read documents, I usually see per stirpes, by the branch, by the root is the Latin translation. So that way there, I know that it's going to go to my children's children or my grandchildren if that child dies ahead of me. Banks don't do it that way. Nowhere in the country are they going to do it that way. And plus you have to check with your investment accounts, your life insurance products, or any other product you have at the insurance company, and ask them, how is this going to go to my children, or does it go to my grandchildren? Because it may not. And that's another reason to use a good trust. Sure. Sometimes there's a limited time or ability to fund a trust too. I have a lot of clients that'll walk in the bank and they'll say, listen, I've got stage 4 cancer. I don't have an estate plan. What do I do? We may not have a lot of time, to do a full-fledged trust and title everything the proper way. So sometimes a quick will and some beneficiary designations might work, but that happens. So you have to think about the time and your physical ability to fund your trust. Now, I funded my trust in a week, but I keep it simple. My assets are in one place. My bank accounts are in another place. So I've got investments one place, bank another place, and the insurance policy at the bank I was able to retitle, through employee benefits. So, it depends on that's another reason as you get older to simplify where your assets are. Don't have your eggs sprinkled all over. Put them in one basket. Keep a good handle on where they are. Track them. Make sure you're paying the lowest cost, and that you can monitor the progress of those assets. Is it functioning the way the market is, or is it working against the way the market is? That's a problem too. So if the markets are up and your assets are down, what's happening?
How many times do you see people that don't have or have all these assets sprinkled everywhere where like the wife that has no idea where the husband's put everything? I mean, is that a
many times we see that? And we've seen it where they didn't know where the combination was to the safe, and we had to contact the safe company. So there's lots of times where they're in all different banks across the country. They're in different brokerage houses. They're in trust companies. I mean, it really makes sense to pull those assets together for you to track, and also for your next in line in your documents, whether it's a professional trustee like the bank handling things or it's a family member. It really is overwhelming. And you don't know, as you get older, if you start to lose your memory, you may miss out on an asset. You may have lost a $50,000 bank account. We've had that happen where clients join us, and then every week they're coming in with another $50,000 they found here, $100,000 there. It's too dangerous, especially with so many fraudsters out there. It's a better idea to keep your eggs under one basket.
Absolutely. I was gonna. Ginny just said, "Are you recording this, Ginny?" I just want to let you know we are recording it, and you can certainly listen to it afterwards. So just wanted to let her know.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. You want to go ahead and go on to the next slide?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. 1 second here. All right. I'm back.
Okay, so you always want to start with an inventory. And I always ask people before, and I meet with people complimentary all the time at the banks. Of course, the last month, not so much, but hopefully in June or so, we'll be able to meet face to face again and across the conference table, of course. But we'll have an inventory. What do you own? How do you own it? How is it titled? Is it in your name? Is it in joint name? Is it in trust name? Are there beneficiaries assigned? Are there not beneficiaries? Who are your beneficiaries? Who are you disinheriting? We see that a lot too. In my office, I don't pass judgment, but sometimes there are folks who will disinherit family members for whatever reason, but it's important. And a lot of times I see where when I read the document, it may disinherit Larry, but it doesn't say anything about Larry's children.
Right.
So are you disinheriting the whole line, or are you just disinheriting one person? Always good to know.
And when you say disinherit, just to help, for clarification purposes, what does that really mean?
Well, if I have 4 children and one of them I'm sideways with and I don't want them to get any money, that means I'm excluding them from as a beneficiary. So I'm going to disinherit them out of my estate plan, which means they're not going to get anything when I pass. And then if I pass away, but the question is, do I want their children to get their share, or is the whole line wiped out? Children, grandchildren. So that's really good. And that's good to talk about and to know. And sometimes children are brought back in too, and they're reinherited.
Well, I can imagine too, just even like with what you said there, there might be a lot of times where people hadn't even thought about like that side of they hadn't even thought through like, all those things. You might bring some of these questions up and it might,
oh, absolutely,
help them have a revelation, so.
Yeah, a lot of times they'll say, I never had this conversation when I met with the attorney, and the attorneys do a great job. But as administrators, we're looking at things really at that ground level, looking at the granular pieces of what's happening. What are the relationships between your children? What are the relationships with your stepchildren? What's happening with the grandkids? How is all this working? And really, then again, it goes to who's the best administrator. Should it be family, or should we keep family out of it? Sometimes it's nice to have an independent, unbiased third party. It's actually less expensive than naming family, which is nice.
Right. Yeah, family might cost more money in the long run sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
You can go on to the next screen here. Let's see here. Was that it? Did we go through it already?
That was the one that we had done for will versus trust. Okay. And another thing I wanted to touch on, to go one piece that we didn't talk about, is when you have real estate that's out of state. So if you have real estate in Florida, but you also have a summer home in the Adirondacks, well, you should have a trust, because if you pass away, you're going to have ancillary probate in the other state and full probate in the state to which you're domiciled. So that costs more money too. So really, when you have people with multiple pieces of property, it may make sense to have that revocable trust. Now, if it's rental property, that's a whole different ballgame. Now we're talking about liability, and we have to talk about asset protection, and things get a little bit different. But definitely, in having a trust when those circumstances helps too, but we just do it in a different way.
Sure. Now, when it comes to the, because I know a lot of this, we talk about the estate planning side of it. When you talk about gathering up all the eggs and kind of help, pulling everything together so we can better manage it. Are there like kind of investment strategies for that that you guys talk about separately? Like, is the estate planning side and the investment management side of it like two different conversations typically, or?
Yeah, as we meet together, we talk about the estate planning piece first. And of course, from the estate planning, you see the investments, right? So we know what there's assets out there. So then normally what we do is we take the statements from their investments and we do a complementary analysis. And Greg Thomas is one of our portfolio managers, and he, along with Sam, they both do a great job. And Greg will take those statements and literally put together a book. We just did one. We mailed one to a client last week. It's 107 pages. Right. So we really do a deep analysis of what they have, what it's costing them, what's the risk level of those assets, what are the internal costs and the external. If we can help them, which generally we save people anywhere from $5,000 a year to $47,000 a year in expenses of where they currently are to where we would manage money. And it's amazing. And also lower the risk level, because as a trust department, we have to follow a higher standard as a fiduciary. So we always have to act in their best interest, which is very important. Non-commission too.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Big difference.
Right. So on a practical level too, just like curiosity. So like if you guys were named as the administrator of the trust, right? And say like you had a husband and wife couple that is the I guess they're the benefit, they're the owners, the beneficiaries of the trust. So then like say one of them had a health issue or the husband had something come up, like would the wife then like reach out to you guys specifically, or like who would the wife or that person reach out to kind of help them with navigating, okay, like how do we continue paying for these expenses, or who's in charge now if my husband's not here? Or...
Right. And generally they are co-trustees in the beginning. And then generally if a spouse passes away, the other spouse, if they're healthy, will take over and they'll be the trustee. But we would work with the surviving spouse just to give them some guidance right off the bat. And then if they would like us to step in to manage the assets, pay bills, take care of property, take care of insurances, take care of taxes, we can do all that for them. And literally the difference between us just managing their investments or being full trustee is maybe 0.08 or 0.07. It's a very de minimis cost to have the full strength of a trust department. So you have a trust administrator and a portfolio manager, and then I'm always the backup, the third backup. So they have 3 people on a team plus another team of backup administrators to help them. Because there are things that a surviving spouse has to deal with, and along with grieving their spouse, planning the funeral, taking care of real estate. If they have 2 homes, do they need 2 homes? Should they go to assisted living? So we take care of all of those matters.
So then if there's a need for getting set up or utilizing like a long-term care insurance policy, in the future, or if even when it comes like maybe some Medicaid planning type of things, like, do you guys get involved at that point as far as as to when we need to do this or when we should activate that?
Yep, great question. We always do. Whenever I work with clients up front, when they name the bank, which there's no cost to name the bank in their documents, and I help them set all that up for free, I always get a copy of those long-term care policies. So when something happens, we can step in and start billing those first, because we want to tap that bucket first before we go to their investment.
Gotcha.
So we will help them if they do run out of money. We had a couple about 10 years ago now. They were in nursing home care together. It was $17,000 a month. So eventually one passed away and the other one had run out of money. So we applied for Medicaid for them at that time. So we handle it right from the start. Now, most of our clients don't run out of money, but they were, because of the draw and the asset level they started with, they did run out of money.
So do you find that when people are entering retirement, is that a good time for them to meet with you, or should they even be meeting with you prior to that? Or, when do you find that most people actually do meet with you when they should meet instead of when they should meet with you?
And sometimes we do catch it when it's too late and they've already made some drastic mistakes that we could have saved them time, money, and asset level. So generally, if they're working, let's talk then. We can talk about what are you accumulating? Where are you investing? Because that's the easy phase. And Sam always says that. It's easy when you're accumulating money as to where to put it in ETFs that are low cost and how to do it right. It's just when you get to that trigger when you're thinking about retirement. And we have a great software that we can run through, and Rich Emsch is one of our trust officers and does a great job where we do a deep analysis. When can you retire? When should you retire? When should you pull Social Security? When should you delay it? We talk about all those things. What's your life going to be like in retirement? You're going to have 2 homes. You're going to have a boat, an extra car every 10 years. What's going to happen? So we forecast all that out, and then we stress test that plan to say, what if one spouse passes away and we lose a pension, or we lose a Social Security check, or we start spending money in a bigger way because we have home care at $8,000 to $10,000 a month? What happens? So we certainly would want to work with couples as soon as possible, or even single folks as soon as possible, so we can at least give them our advice, even if it's just for free, to help them out. That way we put them on a good course, and then we can help them later. Because it's really hard to meet with somebody worth $800,000 and you say, geez, if you had been with us, you would have been worth $1.2 million.
Right.
That's heartbreaking to think of what happened to their assets, and just because they just didn't have a chance to know anything.
Yeah. Well, so do you guys then find, are you guys able to work with other financial planners then? So if a client comes in, they have a financial planner, they're like, we love this person, like they've been with us forever, like we want to continue with them. Are you guys able to still kind of help facilitate on the trust side, or does it need to be kind of a little bit of everything?
We can work with them, but generally when we take that investments or their estate plan and their financial plan and we look at it, we can usually save them money and do a better job and lower the risk because we're not in the brokerage world. But we can, of course, if they've had somebody long-term and they're doing a good job, then they can just hold the course. And just because they name us in their estate plan doesn't mean they have to move everything to us either. They can stay where they are if they feel comfortable, and it will just help when the time comes. And generally, like I said, we save them money, lower the risk, and better the performance. We've got an 18-year history of our equity performance. It's outstanding.
Because I would assume then, like, a lot of times too, like your primary role or functionality is kind of on the spend downside, but like later years in life where we're trying to manage everything. Like we're not trying to accumulate like in the trust administration side of it or the estate planning side of it. I'm guessing it's more of kind of like on the how does we've built this up, how do we spend this down properly, right? Or is that
how do we not run out of money? And that's what that software does. It runs us an analysis with 5,000 functioning analysis underneath of it different variations to say what will happen and what are our chances of running out of money in 30 years. Because if you retire at 70, you want to know when I'm 100 years old, am I out of money or do I still have money? Am I going to give something to the kids? So we like to know, should you be spending 6% when you're only spending 4%? Because you could have more fun. Or if you're spending 8% and you only should be spending 6%, you might run out of money. So we get that green zone of when are we really in a good place where we're pretty confident based on market analysis and your investments and your spending that you will not run out of money. Because people like to know that.
Right.
They should know that.
Right. No, that's great. I love it. Is there anything in particular, anything else that you think that you wanted to cover, or just at least share today? Because I mean, this is all the information you shared was extremely valuable. So thank you, for everything. But is there anything else that comes to mind that you think is important for people to be aware of?
I think just having the courage to sit down and have that conversation about the family. Sometimes people like to have rose-colored glasses on and say, "Oh, everything's fine. My kids are going to get along." It doesn't always happen that way. People get crazy when it comes to money. And once the loved one's gone and that grief sets in, sometimes they just react in a very odd way that maybe could have been forecasted, but not easily to swallow, that your family might have some problems. Especially in a second marriage situation, that's really where things can change. And people think, well, if anything happens to me, everything goes to my spouse, but he'll take care of all of our kids. That doesn't always happen. A lot of times that's the first phone call after the funeral home is, I'm going to change the estate plan, and those kids are coming out. So we have to be really careful to be able to let someone know that when they pass away, there's a really good chance that everything they wanted is going to happen. And if their investments are in a bad way and we can help them, let's do that. As a trust department, we have a really high standard. We're very highly scrutinized. The federal government, the state government comes in and they do incredible audits and regulation examination, which is good. When you're in the brokerage world, not so much. So it's a little looser standard. So we like that high standard of quality. I think that's
sure. I just wanted to share this with everyone too. For those that don't know Christine, she does a fantastic job, and I know she's been in this community for a long time. And the beautiful part about it too is just Charlotte State Bank and Trust, just being a local community bank. It's not a massive. It's not Wells Fargo financial advisors. I mean, it is. They're here. They live here in our community. They work in our community, and they're here for our local community. So it's just great to know that you guys are very invested in Charlotte County, and I appreciate all you do. But if you guys need to reach out to Christine, here's her information. So thank you for that. So appreciate it.
We always say that we put the personal back in personal trust.
Yeah, I like that. Absolutely. Which is it's so true, because it's got to feel nice for a lot of people to know that you guys live and work and really are devoted to Charlotte County.
Especially right now, we've got trust administrators that have everyone's working from home or rotating through the office, and we're calling clients, making sure they have what they need. If they need food delivered, medication delivered, adult diapers delivered, whatever they need, we're taking care of our clients' needs and being on the phone. And when markets were up and down, our portfolio managers were on the phone with their clients. A lot of times people have brokers that when the markets go up and down, they don't hear from them. It's crickets because they're scared. They don't know what to say. But we go into it with a good plan so our clients don't have to worry. They know they've got 5, 6, 7, 8 years worth of bonds stored up that aren't going to be volatile like the rest of the stock market. And they're going to hold their value, which is nice. So they know they've got that money built up for 7, 8 years of income. So they really don't care if the market's up or down for a quarter or 2 quarters or even 2 years. That's a good feeling to have, especially when you're worried about your life and death situations with a virus.
Absolutely. No, it's such great points, and honestly, and thank you for all that you guys are doing right now. Thank you and I know it's got to be a crazy time. I can only imagine with the virus, probably both on the financial end and also on the, oh, hey, we need to wrap up these things, or I've been talking about this for 2 years and I need to put that in my will, and just all those little last minute things.
Getting a lot of frantic calls.
Right.
A lot of
I can imagine. Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
Right.
What's nice is that they can go by a branch. They can give the teller their will, trust, power of attorney. They're scanning it to me, and I'm able to read it here remotely and then call them. So we're still able to do, or we can do a WebEx meeting, and they can see me, I can see them, and we can talk through it. So that's nice too, is that they still have the ability to have their estate plan reviewed through me, even though we're not meeting face to face right now.
Sure, absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. I look forward to getting back together. I look forward to being able to put this event back on the other side of this thing, someday. And in the meantime, though, feel free to reach out to Christine directly through Charlotte State Bank and Trust. And the reality of it is too is if you guys have any questions about estate planning, wills, trusts, and all the stuff that we talked about today, she's a great person to talk to, a great place to start. If you want a second opinion or have things looked over, feel free to reach out to her. And thank you, Christine, for everything.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And to all the wonderful people that supported us and asked questions and tuned in, thank you guys for joining us today. Y'all have a wonderful day, and we'll see y'all soon.
Thank you.
All right. We should